Apex Online Racing is sponsored by Elgato, who created this lovely Stream Deck. For more information about the Stream Deck, the link is in the description below.
Hello everyone and welcome to Apex Online Racing Hype Energy Formula 1 Leagues. I am Fizzymon and I will be your host here today, and alongside me as always is Jacob Hancox. Welcome Jacob, and are you excited for round number 12 here in Sao Paulo?
Yeah, round number 12, final round of the season. Of course the championship all wrapped up, but we do have a lot of drivers that we know really like this circuit here today, and some very strong contenders to look forward to doing battle here.
Yes, it definitely should be a very exciting one. I did just get the news it's going to be an all-dry qualifying and race, so that should be very exciting to see today. And then as always, please let us know if there are any kind of issues in the stream, whether it's losing frames or whatnot, or if any of the volumes are off, as we always like to optimize the performance now as the drivers get out on track. And it looks like Risque is going to be the first one to start a lap. 15 drivers today. We might get up to 17 with Corsac and Duza possibly joining late. But either way, I'm sure we'll have plenty of action for you today. Who do you think's going to get pole? Let's do an early guess. One driver. Who do we think's going to get it?
I don't know. I mean, there's a few. I think this is one of Jan Fehler's better tracks, I will say. I think we could well see Jan Fehler being right up there. Tom 97, you can never count out. And Lenny, of course, the new champion, you can't count him out either. I'd say it's probably going to be one of those three, but we do know as well from talking with Risky, who's about to start his first flying lap, that he really rates himself at this circuit. We talked to him after last race in Canada, where he had a sort of solid race in terms of pace. He picked up a lot of penalties, had some inconsistency. He's only just started driving without the line, so I don't think I'd put him in the battle for pole here, but he might be one to watch as well.
Yes, he definitely would be one to watch. I think he did a 106.0 in time trial, which would beat out last season's pole time around this track of a 106.12 set by Jan Fehler. So, of course, Jan would definitely be a favorite. But based off of last season's race, I'm going to go with Tom. So, like I mentioned in our little pre-race chat, Tom did not actually try in qualifying. He did a last to first challenge, and he ended up about 5 seconds off of the race win, carving through the field, and he just had absolutely amazing pace. So I think I'm going to go with Tom today for pole, and we'll see what he can do, and we'll see what kind of time it is. But yeah, like you said, there's a lot of options because Lenny, our current champion, you know, you can never count him out. You can never count out Jan. And then we got Risky here coming up to the line. He'll be setting the first time of the session. It will be a valid time as Crewnex retires in Sector 1, and Risky does a 106.6 to start the day.
Yeah, that's correct in the wall there, by the way. So that is that's a mechanical, not a mechanical failure. It's just a terminal damage sort of failure there for the Alfa Romeo. So Crewnex will not be able to actually set a qualifying lap. That first attempt from Risky, not amazing. 3 drivers already in the 106.6s with Johan in the 106.8s. ByBlue wasn't able to complete their lap without invalidating. Kev Genetics is now going to be the next driver to head up towards the line and still seems to be pushing out there in the Alpha Tauri. And let's see what Kev will be able to do when he comes across the line just now. It's also going to be a 106.6, but it's just a touch slower than Dean, Risky, and Fernandez.
1/10 separating the top 4. It's looking very close so far. Lenny currently on track on the medium tires, and as we said, as Jan Fehler goes almost 2/10 clear of his teammate, BRL Dean. But like I was saying with Lenny, he's on the medium tires right now. I'm assuming he's just trying to put a banker out. I don't think he's going to start on this tire considering how competitive the field will be today in qualifying especially. But on a pretty good lap so far, our current champion coming through the final sector. Now I noticed Kev Genetics was a 50.4 through Sector 2, and Lenny actually just matched that. Can Lenny actually put himself in what is now the top 8 on the medium tire.
Well, we'll have to see. The Frenchman coming around what is not really a corner onto the back straight and across the line. And it is a 106.6 as well, but critically, it's a high 106.6, which puts Lenny at the back of that train of cars. 1/10 faster, and he'd have gone from 7th to 2nd. So that's going to be a bit galling then for the Renault driver, and that might be the difference maker that determines whether he's going to be able to start this race on mediums or not.
A very impressive lap. It's funny because I used Kev Genetics as the benchmark, and he actually just matched Kev Genetics' time all the way down to the millisecond. So how about that from the Frenchman? What a lap there on the mediums. I think if you're someone like Jan or Tom right now, you got to be looking at that lap and going, wow, look out, he's got a lot of pace. But speaking of Tom, he's coming to the end of Sector 2 now, 50.2, so he's 2/10 clear of Lenny's time, possibly trying to challenge Jan for provisional pole here. Let's see what he can do on the run to the line now. DRS wide open, using the shortest line possible. He's going to cross the line and do a 106.5. Good enough for second, but about a half a tenth down from our current pace setter, Jan Fehler.
Yeah, and he just lost a little bit of time in each sector there to Jan Fehler, just a tiny bit. So it is not the end of the world there for Tom for an opening banker lap. I think he'll be relatively okay with that. But we do feel like there's going to be a lot more time to come from these guys as the session progresses. What's Maestro Hoffi doing out there? I noticed that he had to completely give up on his first attempt due to an invalidation. He's going again now on the same set of tires. He's coming up towards the line in the Ferrari. Was very impressive in qualifying last time out in Canada. Less impressive here in Brazil so far. A 106.8, only good enough for P10 as things currently stand.
It was a purple final sector. I don't know if that's a true purple sector or just the game giving us that. But if it's a true purple sector, then I would have to think that there's definitely more time there for the Ferrari driver. It looks like a Birel Adina starting a lap. We'll just keep an eye on his, the Brazilian, to see what kind of lap he can do. Sitting in third right now. 10th and a half down on his teammate, but can Dean get an improvement at least in the first sector now? Another thing I was going to note, I just completely lost his train of thought. Nope, remembered it now. So one thing I was told by some drivers throughout some tiers is that sometimes drivers will take 2 out laps to burn extra fuel because the 5 kilograms of fuel is 3.4 laps. And, you know, you have, it's a pretty quick lap, you know, so there's a lot of time to kill. And if you're trying to get that car just a little bit lighter, and with the tire wear being pretty low around this track, that extra lap, making the car a little bit lighter, might help you. But in the case of Maestro Hoffi, only good enough for P10 at this time.
Now Dean up to the final corner, Junkao, and actually improving quite a lot on his previous lap time. He's on track to challenge his teammate Jan Fehler at the very top, though, of course. This is his second crack at it, whereas Jan has only had the one so far. Let's see if Dean can at least claim provisional pole position for a few moments as he crosses the line, and indeed he does so. Pretty comfortable margin in the end, about a 10th and a half there for Dean. At the top, it's up to Jan Fehler, Tom now to respond. I think Risky is just crossing the line as well. He does improve, but he doesn't improve by anywhere near as much as the Brazilian. So very, very good lap time there from Dean.
Yeah, speaking of Brazilians, Fernandez just jumped up into P3 with a 106.5. So not as quick as Dean's lap, but quicker than Risky's now. But look at that gap once again, from Fernandez to Risky. Not much separating these drivers. It's definitely going to be very, very close come the end of the session. Max AMG doing a 107.4 and validating. He's still without a lap, and so is Patrick. Now Krunex. Oh, well, Patrick just went up to P9 with a 106.7. Not a bad banker lap for the AlphaTauri driver who locks up in turn 1, but he's going to have to find some more time if he wants to improve on the lap.
Jan's about to go top here. That looked like a good enough final corner, and he was already almost 2/10 up on his previous best lap time before we got to that stage as he crosses the line. And yeah, look at that. Big lap time from Jan Fehler. You mentioned his pole position last season. Was it a 106.1 that Jan Fehler pulled on that occasion? Well, he's at the 106.1s again.
106.12. So he's almost there matching his time, and he's got 9 minutes left. And are definitely 2 sets of fresh soft compound tires to use. So we'll see if he decides to just go for it. Meanwhile, it looks like Lenny, currently in the middle sector, is behind his teammate Blue, who's also not sure if he's on an in-lap or whatnot. But Lenny right now going through the slow section of the middle sector now, coming through the fast left-hander. Let's kind of see what sector 2 time it is and if he's improving. He's on the softs. Oh my, he's 6/10 up on his lap. It's not a purple middle sector, but Lenny right now on track to do a 106.0 because it was 0.593 up on his lap, and now on the run, is flat out to the line. What does the Frenchman have in store? It's a 105.9! How about that for a lap for provisional pole? That is a statement by our current champion.
Yeah, that is just insane there from the Frenchman. We said that medium lap time, that was a good lap. This is a great lap from Lenny. And I was going to say, I have no idea who has the purple middle sector. I think that must have been a game issue because I'm pretty sure no one got close to the middle sector time that Lenny was able to put in there. And a fantastic final sector as well. It's pretty much just a point and squirt, the final sector. But Lenny finding even more time there than any other driver had managed to do so far this qualifying session. Fantastic stuff from him. Tom is looking to respond, but going into the final sector, he wasn't even improving on his previous best lap time. So this might be a slightly disappointing run for Tom, who is going to commit to the line and improves enough to move ahead of Fernandez, that is behind both McLarens and the champion Lenny.
Yeah, 2/10 clear Lenny over Jan Fehler. Now Jan's got to be thinking, all right, now I got to do my A game. And for Tom, not sure what happened in the middle sector, because, yeah, like we said, he was down. He was 0.004 of a second down, but he was able to have a very nice final sector. So the British driver probably thinking, all right, where did I go wrong? How can I improve? But time is ticking with 7 minutes and 20 seconds left. Anyone currently on a lap right now is the Ferrari Meister Hoffy. He goes up to 7th with a 106.555 and jumps several positions up, but not quick enough. He's almost in the top 5. If he can just shave off half a tenth.
Yeah, for decent stuff there from Maestro Hoffy. Can be pretty happy with that lap time, a bit happier than the previous at least. And he's actually got some of the best final sectors of anyone. He might be the fastest guy. Apart from Lenny, I think he's the fastest guy in the final sector, which suggests to me that maybe he's running a little bit less wing angle than some of the other guys, because he's clearly not that fast compared to everyone else, apart from in that final sector. And he's losing the time again in the middle sector, where you need a bit more of that downforce. So he's doing the trade-off there. I believe he's got a low drag sort of setup, which might well help him a little bit more in the race than it would in qualifying.
Yes, I definitely think he'd be one to look out for in the race, because all he has to do really is just keep with the cars ahead, and then he should be able to just out-drag them down the straight and get them into turn 1, since that is probably I would say that definitely that's the main overtaking position, with turn 4 being the other one. But now Risky on a lap right now in his racing point. He is almost a tenth improved in the first sector, but it's going to be this middle sector that is the tells. Johan goes up to 5th. Risky almost 2/10 up on his lap.
Ooh.
A little bit of a mistake though coming out of the final corner. What else did you see?
Yeah, it just didn't look like a perfect final corner there. Had a bit of a lock-up on entry and then a kick of oversteer on the exit. The line didn't seem quite right. Risky crosses the line, and yeah, you can see lost all that time he'd made up on the rest of the lap, and then a little bit more as well. Didn't manage to improve. Still stuck there down in P7. Has about one more attempt left to go, you'd have to say, with a fresh set of tyres. Johan has been able to move up into 5th. I think a few drivers are now out there on flying laps. Patrick goes now into 5th, displacing Johan. Jan Thaler is now on a flying lap as well. He's in the middle of the lap, just exiting Pinarino, heading towards Bico de Pazzo. No, and it's a very, very tricky corner there, but he gets it turned in without any trouble.
Yes, Jan looking very good. What's his middle sector going to be? Can he strike back at the Frenchman? It's purple through the middle sector. 10th and a half up. Can Jan respond to the Frenchman now? It's just a flat-out run to the line. DRS will be wide open. And can Jan put it into the 1 minute, 5 second lap times? It's going to be up to the line. Yes, he does.
Ooh.
Purple final sector, but not good enough for provisional pole. A mighty lap, but not mighty enough.
Unbelievably close stuff there at the top, but Lenny, of course, is he has a sort of lap in hand, if you will. He hasn't had the full extent of the track improvement that Jan Thaler has, so Lenny's still going to be pretty pleased with the way things are shaping up at the moment. You'd have to say anyone who wouldn't be pleased with being on provisional pole probably needs the head looking at. So yeah, Lenny definitely going to be happy with that one. Let's see now Tom, who's just starting his 3rd flying lap of the session. His second one was a little bit of a disappointment. Let's see if he can find something more on this 3rd attempt.
Yeah, since most of the drivers are kind of on in-laps right now, Blue currently on one as well, but we're going to ride on board with Tom here. Why don't you take it through after he locks up through turn 1?
Ooh, that's not going to be good. And yeah, look at that, running wide through turn 3. Had to get off the throttle to make sure that he didn't invalidate. The center S is not very good on this occasion from Tom97. And yeah, you can see he's already 0.6 of a second down. So I think he's just going to back out of this one. I'm surprised he's still in hot lap mode with his ERS, unless he's just heading straight back into the pits, which he might well be doing, I suppose. But yeah, no, down into 0 overtake mode. Not happy with the way that lap started, and I can't blame him.
Yeah, he's got time, you know, he can return back to the pits and should be able to go out with about 2 minutes left, I would say, judging by where he's at on track. So he's got time, and he'll have basically be able to use the most out of the track right now. We got both Ferraris on track. Max AMG, who has not set a lap, currently down in 15th. He had that one invalidated run, if I'm correct, but he was sitting in the garage for most of the session, so maybe he's trying to go for that P11. You know, trying to do the reverse strategy, but we'll have to wait and see. Maester Hoffy, meanwhile, through the first sector, he has invalidated. So no one currently on a hot lap. Drivers just kind of getting ready for their final runs of the session.
Yeah, Tom is now starting the next flying lap on this same set of tyres, and he's had a much cleaner run through the center S's than before. So now let's try riding on board with him for this one. Going to give us a little bit more of a thrilling experience as it's down to Skidoo de Lago, turns 4 and 5, the left-handers here. A little bit of an early turn in, just a touch early there from Tom97. That's going to have hurt him a little bit with getting the power down on the exit. Now into Ferradura, you've got to be very, very committed. Just launch the car in there. Very much under control there for Tom97, which isn't always what you want through that part of the lap. Now here, you need control more than anything. Through Pinheirino, the car can slip out from underneath you like a banana skin if you're not careful. The Cudapato all looked tidy there from Tom97. Let's see at the end of Sector 2 what the time is looking like. It's looking pretty good, to be honest there. He's up by about a quarter of a second on his previous best. That's at least enough to move him ahead of Dean. And if he finds more time in this final sector, he might be joining the 105 club here. Let's see now as he pumps the throttle, goes across the line, and it's a 106.1 for Tom97. Couldn't quite find that last 10th and a half.
Yeah, that little bit of a lock. He had a couple lockups on that lap by the looks of it, which kind of just compromised it just enough for him. But he's got almost 2/10 back to Brielle Demas. Max AMG goes up into 4th position. What a lap by the Ferrari driver, basically one-shot qualifying it. What a lap by him, but Tom currently sitting in 3rd, but he's going to have to look out as everyone's going to have a chance to improve on this final run of the session. But Tom, 3rd is probably the best he'll do by the looks of it, because he looks like he's out of fuel going through the middle sector.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be able to go again on the same set of tyres. Unfortunately for him, Maestro Hoffy is going to be the next driver to cross the line. Scratch that. He's heading into the pit lane instead. So Hoffy will not be starting inside the top 10 here. That's a bit of a disappointment after Canada. Fernandez has backed out of this attempt, so he's about to go again on the same set of tyres. And he hasn't got a whole lot left in the battery. So this is going to be a little bit of a compromised attempt for the Brazilian. Who's next to cross the line? Risky is on an out lap. So is F1 Racer. So I think it's going to be Blue. Oh, no, never mind. That's Lenny on track. Just trying to see if anyone is out there on a flying lap. Let's see Dean. Dean is out there on a flying lap. Dean was very strong in the opening sections of qualifying. And oh, he's made a bit of a mess of Juncao. I was about to say he had a good middle sector as well. But Juncao was not what he wanted it to be there at all. I think he'll have lost all of the time he gained, unless I'm mistaken. Let's see as he crosses the line. And indeed, he only improves by 0.003 of a second.
Yes, very unfortunate. I wonder if he's going to go for another lap here, because he kind of took that wide line across the line. So I'm going to have to assume he's going to give it his all here at the end of the session. Tom, meanwhile, out of fuel, coming up to the pits right now. Behind him is Fernandez and KevGenetics. Now, Fernandez not improving on this lap, but also KevGenetics a little compromised probably on his run. Might be a little distracted due to the Brazilian up ahead as he returns to the pits. KevGenetics, though, on the run to the line, what can he do? He does a 106.5, but he stays P11. Behind him, Risky. Risky's 0.3 improved through the middle sector. Not enough for Paulo at this time, but Risky crosses the line, 106.2. That's the second row. Behind him, F1 Racer crosses the line, stays 14th. But what do Lenny and Jan? Lenny invalidated his lap. Can Jan steal pole position? Lenny's defenseless here after invalidating his lap. Jan now, it's all on the German. Can he cross the line and steal pole position? No, he cannot. He does not improve on his final attempt. And it looks like, unless Brielle Dean can improve on this lap, no, he's returning to the pits. And it's looking like Lenny will survive the threat from Jan behind.
Oh, and I tell you what, Jan did have more time in that lap. The first sector of that lap was the fastest Jan had gone. He was up about a 10th at the end of the first sector alone, and it's not a long first sector. But the middle sector, he lost all that time straight back, and that let Lenny off the hook with that invalidation. And the Frenchman, the champion, manages pole position here in Brazil, a coveted spot indeed. And I don't want to toot my own horn too much, but the 4 drivers I mentioned as being in the conversation for pole position are the top 4 at the end of the set.
Yeah, definitely toot your own horn there. You got those predictions bang on correct, with Lenny being on front, Jan alongside him, and then on the second row, Tom and Risky. So it should be a very, very fun one today. Meanwhile, behind them, we got Max AMG, the Ferrari driver, starting in 5th position after basically one-shot qualifying that. Alongside him, BR Aladar, the Brazilian, at his home Grand Prix. Looked strong at the start of qualifying, but wasn't able to get that final lap together. On the 4th row, we got Patrick and Johan, followed by Fernandez and Blue on the 5th row, and rounding out the guaranteed soft runners to start the race. Kev Genetics and Maester Hoffey starting 11th and 12th. Revitalize in 13th, followed by F1 Racer and Crewnex, who spun out early on in the session. So 15 drivers here today. No one joined mid-session, so this looks like our grid today. And I'll be curious to see now, do the guys from 11th to 15th go for the reverse strategy, or do they start on the softs? That'll be interesting, because usually you think reverse strategy, but there's not a whole lot difference between the mediums and the softs around here, especially when it comes to wear.
Yeah, I mean, you got to imagine that at least one of them will roll the dice on that. There's going to be a couple out there. You know, F1 Racer didn't necessarily show, Revitalize as well, didn't necessarily show at any point that they had the sort of pace of the very front runners. So if they want a really good result, they kind of have to do something different or hope that everyone else crashes out, but that's not always going to come through. Skies are looking a little bit dark here. I don't know if you got the weather forecast for this race session. There's a possibility of some rain just looking at the skies right now.
So according to what Jan told me, it would be all dry. So I'm assuming we're just going to get cloud cover and it's going to flirt with it, but there should not be any drops onto the track. So that's good news if you are drivers and you do not like the wet. And I think that'll give us the action that we want around here. As fun as changing conditions are, Brazil always provides some very fantastic racing, even in the dry.
Yeah, Brazil is one of the circuits where you don't need the wet weather to make it a good race. You can just have it as in fact, the wet weather would probably make it a worse race. So I'm pretty happy if we were just going to have a fully dry session here. And just thinking back to the grid, the 2 drivers who I feel are most out of position here, with the exception of Crewnex, we didn't really get to see the pace off, so we can't really speak about. But I think Fernandez and Dean both had really strong starts to that qualifying session, but then couldn't really build on their momentum, kept invalidating, that sort of thing. So I think in terms of pace, both of them are a little bit behind where they might reasonably be expecting to be. Another one, maybe Blue as well, Maestro Hoffey perhaps, but mainly I'm going to be watching Fernandez and Dean to be making some progress.
Yeah, I would agree on that. I mean, Fernandez and Dean looked very strong at the start of the session. Dean not able to put together those last laps, especially. I mean, we didn't really get a chance to see Fernandez final laps because Dean, he was 2/10 up, improving on his lap, but he probably would have put it maybe ahead of Risky with his final lap, but he made that mistake coming out of the final corner. So yeah, the Brazilian definitely looking to make some moves up the grid. But interesting enough, Kev Genetics down 11th on the mediums. He looked like he had some pace too. I wouldn't say as much as the 2 drivers you just mentioned, but he bailed out on his final run, so he might have thought, okay, I'm in 11th. Let's go to the reverse strategy, see what I can do. So, and Maester Hoffey also at the start of the session looked pretty quick. So, I do think that some of these guys starting towards the back might give us more action than we think. But anything can happen around here. Drivers just got to keep it clean, and who knows? But it should be an exciting one.
Absolutely, and everyone outside the top 10 has indeed elected to run the contra strategy. The medium tires, the tires of choice for Kev Genetics, Maestro Hoffey, Revitalize, F1 Racer, and Crewnex, who will be lining up 15th and last on the grid after crashing out of qualifying. And yeah, very much looking forward. And I'm also going to wonder here whether the likes of Risky and Max AMG and Dean, whether they are going to be able to keep in the DRS train of the front runners, or whether we're going to see Lenny, Jan Fehler, and Tom just breaking away from the rest. As now they are all beginning to line up on the grid. All 15 drivers just about in place, and the lights will be coming on in just a moment. Here we go then. The lights should begin any moment. There we go. 5 lights already on. And we are go for the last time this season in Apex Online Racing, and it looks to me like Lenny has had a perfectly good start, but Jan Thaler might have had an even better one, and indeed he has. The German takes the advantage straight away into the first corner. Meanwhile, behind Tom and Risky, they're bumping wheels through the center S's there, but Tom actually forced wide as a result of that, and now Dean is going to be able to get through entirely. Risky's lost a whole host of positions as a result of his contact with Tom, and he almost collides with the rear end of Johan into Desquita del Lago there. They're still battling as Fernandez is making it past Risky as well. Tom is losing out to Patrick further up. He's trying to claim that position back and will just about manage to do so. But Jan Thaler took Lenny off the start. Dean has been able to move up already from 6th to 3rd. Tom falls down 1 position and Risky falls down plenty.
Yeah, Jan Thaler, one thing that I've learned about him is he gets like arguably the best starts on this game as they're going too wide through the middle sector through turn 10. But Jan Thaler gets some absolutely amazing starts. I don't know how he does it, but he took full advantage of that ability and took the lead well before turn 1. Great start for the German, and now it's a McLaren sandwich. BRL Dean on the move early on, and then Patrick also looking to go a little defensive here from Max AMG, but it's looking like everyone's going to hold position at the end of lap 1. Risky, though, the biggest loser at the start there, dropping all the way down to 8th.
I don't think we're necessarily going to see any sort of double teaming action here from the McLarens. Dean, only a reserve driver, I believe, is Risky leaving the session there. So after that poor start, Risky falling out of the session looks to be a bit desynchronized from the rest of the lobby as well, judging by the way he's behaving on the timing tower. So that's bad news for Risky, who is really looking forward to this race.
I sent him a backup invite in the event that it was an unfortunate disconnect. Hopefully we can get him back in here because he showed a lot of pace in qualifying, and just an unfortunate start for the Racing Point driver. But up at the front, Dean looks like he's trying to break DRS from Tom behind. Tom barely keeping on, but those front, yeah, it looks like Dean, I mean, my timing board is not working really properly at all, but it looks like Dean keeping up with the front two, but trying to drop Tom behind. But then there's some pretty big gaps. I mean, from Johan to Blue, it looks like that's DRS broken. But Maestro Hoffy up into 9th on the medium tire, so he is on the move at the moment as there's a yellow flag in Sector 3 that is Crewnex. Looks like he is struggling a lot so far today.
Yeah, indeed. Risky back in the session then, but down in 14th. And yeah, Dean dropping Tom is really interesting actually, because looking at Tom's car, there's no visible front wing damage. Now that doesn't always mean that there isn't any, as Lenny's car goes AI. Is this legitimate here? Has Lenny had a disconnection now? His car has the AI symbol next to it, and all of a sudden he's down in 3rd. He's lagging all over the place there as the Frenchman. Tom is having to be very careful, keeping the Renault on the end of a stick there to make sure he doesn't collide with that rear wing. And now he moves up and past the Frenchman. Patrick's getting past him as well, and I do not believe that Lenny is in control of this car.
All right, we'll have to see. I'm not sure what these lobby issues are doing, trying to find Lenny on my friends list. I think I have him on my friends list.
I mean, he didn't leave the session. I'm pretty sure he's still in the session. And in fact, the AI symbol is no longer there next to the Renault. Okay. So I think he's back in the car. I wonder if he just had to pause the game for some reason. Maybe some issue with the wheel. Maybe, you know, wheels falling off tables, that sort of thing can happen. So maybe something like that has occurred for Lenny, and that's lost him a fair amount of time.
Yeah, it looked like initially on that second DRS rate on the run to turn 4, like he had a freeze in the game because he just teleported back about 2 seconds, which I know is common. If a driver has the game freeze, they'll teleport backwards a couple seconds, which is unfortunate. But then, yeah, he did look like he went AI, I mean, with how he was driving through the middle sector, but it looks like he's back in it as Max AMG gets very squirmy behind him. But now this frees up Jan Thaler 1.5 ahead of his teammate, and Dean still trying to keep Tom out of DRS. Question is now, is Tom battery saving like he did last week, or is he pushing?
He's battery saving. Not a huge amount of battery saving, but Dean and Jan Thaler have both been absolutely draining their batteries out at the front. The McLarens are pushing the pace of this race, and they're trying to force the rest of the guys to come along with them or risk falling out of DRS. It's an interesting strategy from the two drivers here, and it looks good right now for Dean, but in the next couple of laps, we're going to be seeing Tom get right back into that DRS zone because he still has about 20% battery charge over and above what Dean is able to offer at the moment.
Yes, meanwhile, Risky going for the move on F1 Racer. We're going to have to keep an eye on him as he charges through the field. He was down at 14th when he reconnected and out of DRS. Risky now all the way up into 11th and sniffing points. So I think we're definitely going to have to keep an eye on him because, you know, he's going to be really, really hungry now after rejoining the lobby with his pace that he had early on. So keep an eye on him. Looking up towards the front, Lenny all over the back of Patrick going into turn 6. Not close enough to make an overtake or think about it, but he's definitely looking a little racy behind the AlphaTauri driver. Look how much later he's able to brake. Avoids locking up, which just closes that gap in on the AlphaTauri driver. Taking a little bit of a different line through turn 9 and now into 10. Looks like Patrick's struggling a little bit, maybe feeling a little of the bit of the pressure with a couple of those lockups. But Patrick almost losing DRS to Tom, and Tom looking like he's picked up the pace a little bit because he's 1.1 behind Dean now, and Dean also 1.4 behind Jan. He was 1.6 last time around, but Lenny gets an amazing launch out of turn 12. He's going to try to make the move on Patrick to go to the right-hand side of the track. Does not look like Patrick's going to be able to defend, and Lenny recovering after what was probably a game freeze, and now back up into 4th position.
Yeah, it looks to me like Patrick struggled with traction on the exit of the final corner there, and that allowed Lenny to have a huge amount of closing speed then on the AlphaTauri, and that puts Lenny back up into 4th. As you mentioned, Tom is now well within DRS range of Dean, but Dean himself is still falling away from Jan Thaler because Jan, while he did push the pace at the beginning, used a lot of his overtake, he started saving up about a lap and a half before Dean did. Didn't let his own battery get down into the single digits. And from that position, it's a lot easier to save it back up to a reasonable spot. And now, Jan Thaler actually has a touch more in his battery than Tom does. So even if Tom does manage to dispatch Dean, who is really, really struggling for electrical charge at the moment, he's not going to have an easy time closing up to Jan Thaler at the front.
Yes. Meanwhile, at the back, Fernandez pitted for hards on previously around. I don't think he had any damage on his Williams. I didn't see any on it when we were looking through the field before. But Fernandez having a pretty shocking race so far, 24 seconds off of 14th place. But yeah, Dean starting to be dropped by Jan, just fall into the clutches of Tom and Lenny in tow. And it's going to be a very, very hard next few laps for Dean, as he's going to feel a lot of pressure from the 2 drivers behind.
Yeah, and the thing is, Dean, I don't think he's really using the overtake mode here, but he's still stuck down there. He just cannot find a way to charge up that battery enough. The car, by default, is deploying enough of the battery that he cannot get anything more out of it. He's stuck down there in the teens, in the single digits sometimes, depending on the section of the track. And that's such a bad situation to be in for the Brazilian at the moment. It's going to leave him an absolute sitting duck to Tom in a couple of laps' time, maybe even this lap around. There's a yellow in Sector 2. That's Krunex, who's lost it again in the middle part of the lap on the exit of Desquita de Lago. But he will be all right. He's just got going again.
Yeah, Krunex's day just has not been well at all. Meanwhile, Patrick has lost DRS to Lenny by the looks of it. Doesn't look like Patrick's going to get it down the straight. No, he does not. So Patrick now being dropped the top 4, pulling away from the rest of the field. But Patrick under pressure from Max AMG, the Ferrari driver going down the inside, locking up a bit, going a little too deep. Does Patrick have an answer around the outside? No, not through 2 and 3. But Patrick's going to get the DRS back on this next straight. Can the AlphaTauri driver make the overtake back and take the position back? He's going to go to the right-hand side of the track, try to squeeze his rival on the apex. They're going side by side. It's as clean as you like, and now through 6, they're still side by side. Max AMG a little ahead of his rival, but now through the fast right-hander of 6 and 7 as Krunex retires from the race. Patrick has the inside line. These guys are still side by side. Holy cow, what is this? These guys going to go side by side for at least half the lap, and now on the run into 9, Max AMG loses out finally on the position.
Ooh.
And Patrick holds on.
Tom, meanwhile, he was able to get Dean into Pico de Pato, just center move up the inside there where Dean wasn't expecting it. And that is fantastic news for Tom, who has been able to clear the second of the 2 McLarens and now has to get on to closing down Jan Thaler. Big gap between himself and Jan at the moment, though, and he's got to be a little bit careful from Dean and from Lenny here, because now they might be 3 wide into the first corner. Lenny with the outside line. Can he go all the way around the outside? He does manage it on Dean, but Tom breaks late enough to hold on to P2 further behind. Johan went a little bit deep there. That's going to leave him vulnerable to Patrick. Max AMG has fallen back. Johan was able to get past both of them because they had used so much of their resources battling with one another. And Patrick there on the inside makes contact with Johan. Johan didn't realize that Patrick was still alongside him, and he goes spinning off at Desquita de Lago. Now Here comes Blue in the middle of the fight as well through Ferradura. It's always tempting to try and go side by side through here, but it's very, very difficult to do indeed. And poor Max AMG cannot get away from the battling at the moment. No matter what happens, he's stuck there battling with one car or another, but he does manage to initially see off the challenge of Blue in that Renault.
Yes, fantastic stuff up at the front and in the middle of the field, but unfortunate for Jan. Yeah, it looked like he turned in just a little too early. Got a little bit of a love tap from Patrick. Was able to avoid taking damage. I don't think Patrick took any real noticeable damage, so he should be okay. But all that battling has lost them DRS up ahead. Meanwhile, Dean losing DRS on Lenny, who's hugging the back of Tom right now. Lenny trying to get back up into second position now on the run down to turn 4. It's going to be looking like Lenny's going to get the overspeed, but will he have enough track to make the move into turn 4? No, he tucks in behind and waits for another lap.
Seems like he's content enough behind Tom 97 at the moment. Didn't push the overtake there on the Retro Poster on the run down towards turn 4. So he wasn't trying to make the overtake on that occasion, but his battery charge is the best of anyone I've seen in this race so far. He's up at 97% as we speak. Tom at 62. Jan Fehler managed to get up to 80% as well, because these guys have been in battery saving mode ever since they got past Dean. So they're all kind of in this conservation phase now where they build it back up, the sort of second phase of the race that we're just entering right now. Dean, meanwhile, isn't really a subscriber to that phase of the race. He is still using his overtake button on the exit of Junção, and that's keeping him so low with the battery charge. And he had such a strong start to this race that because he's been too greedy with the overtake button, he has been falling down pretty quickly now.
I gotta say that at this point in the race, if you're Dean, you gotta use all the battery you got left. You need to keep DRS to Lenny and Tom. And Lenny, with how close he's getting to Tom into turn 1, he's not able to get a good enough run through 2 and 3, and it just compromises his chances of trying to overtake Tom into turn 4. And that also is kind of keeping Dean in the mix. So Dean just really needs to get a good middle sector, and he's gonna basically be guaranteed DRS. But he needs to make sure he keeps it clean through the middle sector where you don't really need to use battery to begin with. So the Brazilian trying to hang on at his home Grand Prix, but he also has a 3-second time penalty to his name, the only driver with a penalty. So Dean needs to be careful. He's got to watch those track limits, but right now it's looking like he should get out of range of Patrick in the coming laps. But the pin window is opening in a few laps' time, so it'll be interesting to see if any of these drivers go for undercuts with Jan 4.1 ahead.
Here we go. I think Lenny's going for it on this occasion. He did use the overtake button on the exit of Junção, and Tom doesn't look like he's going to defend this one whatsoever, allowing Lenny past. And I think these guys realize that they kind of have to work in tandem with one another to catch up to Jan Fehler, because Tom was in clean air last lap, and he was about a 10th away from Jan Fehler's time. So even now, he's not closing in on the German. They're still falling ever so slightly further away, even though they're both in clean air now. So now, they need to give Lenny the opportunity and see if Lenny can drag Tom along with him to get back up towards Jan Fehler. Already in that first sector, Lenny, he's pulled about a 10th on Jan Fehler. So this might have been a good move here from both Tom and Lenny's perspectives.
Yes, and Dean's also a winner here. He's now 7/10 behind Tom. He was able to use that DRS to close up enough. And in the background, while these guys were changing up positions, Max AMG sent it up the inside of Patrick into turn 1 and took the move, hit the apex after locking up, and Max now up into 5th position trying to pull that midfield pack along and hopefully start to close in on the drivers up ahead. But they are flying now with Lenny leading that train, but not really closing in on Jan this time around. Still 4.1, same as it was last time. So Jan Fehler showing amazing pace out front, leading the way here onto lap number 13 out of 36. Only a third of the way through the race though, so I think anything can happen at this stage.
I think the tyres are starting to fall away from these guys now. That was Jan Fehler's first lap in the 110 since the very start of the race. Lenny was on a 109.9, but they were very, fractional differences between the two times, but they're both a little bit slower. They're about, Jan dropped off 4/10 from the previous lap to last lap. So he's starting to lose that pace a little bit in those soft tyres, and I think the same is true then of the cars behind, because obviously you'd expect if Jan was just losing pace irrespective of the tyres, you'd expect Lenny and Tom to be closing in. That's not really happening at the moment.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Not much. Well, now it's 4 seconds, so a little bit closing in by Lenny. but not much going on. And these guys are also, Max AMG, now that he's pulling that group behind, they have not lost any touch. So everyone lapping around the same pace on the softs. Meanwhile, Maestro Hoffy and KevGenX are within DRS range of Risky, and that has caught back up to that midfield pack that we're talking about. So Maestro Hoffy and KevGenX, if they can kind of keep this good pace going, they might be able to pull the overcut as drivers dive into the pits. That is Max AMG and Risky, but Max speeds into the pit lane. That's going to give him a 5-second time penalty, and that is exactly not what he wanted, as that will come back to hurt him with how close the drivers were behind him.
Yeah, and this is a pit lane entry where it's very, very easy to speed into the pit lane, actually. You have a little sort of bend on entry, and it's very high speed. It's very tempting to try and take as much speed as you possibly can into there, but it does bite you. And I can tell you from experience, this is the only track I ever picked up a pit lane speeding penalty on. So, yeah, that's... I definitely found it difficult, and I know that several other drivers do as well. So I'm not too surprised to see Max picking that up. Someone definitely was going to over the course of this race. What is interesting, though, is that Max went for hard tyres and Risky went for the mediums. So they have a different idea about what the best tyre to run is until the end of this race. And I've got to say, I'm surprised that at 14 laps into the race, Max has felt the need to go for the hard tyres.
Yeah, I agree on that one, because at this stage in the race, the mediums can certainly make it to the end. But I wonder if he's running a low downforce setup and he just does not have the tire longevity with the mediums as some of these other drivers do with their larger gaps between front and rear wings. Meanwhile, up at the front, Dean going for the undercut on his rivals up ahead, Patrick and Blue also into the pits. But yeah, back to Max's decision going onto the hards. He's certainly going to be slower and lose probably about 5 or 6 seconds over the course of the second stint to the medium runners around him with the same pace alone. So, interesting move by the Ferrari driver, and we'll see if it plays out for him. But it's looking like he's going to come out really close behind Dean, actually. He's definitely going to be ahead of Patrick. Dean might have gotten held in the pits, so going for the undercut hasn't really paid off for him, as Max AMG in DRS. Risky, meanwhile, going up the inside of Patrick and taking 11th position. Either that was a really good undercut or BRL Dean got held up. Either way, Risky on the move right now. Question is, do the front three respond?
I think it was just a potent undercut there from Max AMG and Risky. I don't think Dean had any particular woes in the pit lane. And I'm going to say that him pitting is a headache that Lenny PNR and Tom97 did not need. They did not need the threat of an undercut from Dean in this race because they know that they're going to finish this race ahead of Dean unless they make some kind of major mistake. Dean has the penalty and he hasn't been able to save battery as efficiently as those guys. He's very unlikely to finish the race ahead of them, but he is likely to get in their way if he undercuts them, and they've stayed out for another lap, so he's almost certainly going to do that, and that is going to help Jan Fehler a lot in the battle with Lenny and Tom.
Yeah, Risky does a 108.8, so yes, certainly undercut has to have been what was happening. Risky flying right now ahead of Max AMG also. Risky trying to recover. He sees Dean up ahead. Dean closing 2/10 on Tom and Lenny these last 2 sectors alone. I think the pit loss is about 20 seconds if I'm correct. So he should come out ahead of Tom, probably behind Lenny, but let's keep an eye on that gap between Tom and Lenny, especially with the top 3 coming through turn 12 now and onto that just flat out run to the line. But Risky also on the move right now. He's the one to watch. I mean, he had that issue disconnected, came back in and back, and he's already cleared many of the drivers around him.
Top 3 then all pitting. They are the last drivers on the soft tyres, and they will go in for the mediums now. No hold in, actually slight hold in the pit lane there for Jan Fehler as the Renault car was going alongside him. Just the placement of the pit box is a bit unfortunate there, and Lenny actually got held a little bit for Tom. Actually, no, he didn't get held for Tom. Actually managed to squeak out just ahead of Tom, but Tom almost managed to jump him in the pit lane there. Let's see where Dean is going to be relative to these drivers then. They are just ahead. He just caught a flash of them there from on board with him as they were exiting the pit lane. Will he be close enough? No, he will not. Good driving then from Tom and Lenny to avoid being undercut by Dean, and that was so important for them.
Yeah, very interesting. I'm not sure. I'm still convinced that Dean might have gotten slightly held like you just saw with Jan in the pits, because he came out closer to Max than what he was prior. And I think that little bit of a held just kind of ruined his chances at an undercut. But meanwhile, behind him, Risky, though, flying with a 108.8 fastest lap. He's 1.7 behind Dean, and he's really low on battery. But the Racing Point driver just needs to catch a little bit of a break, maybe a little bit of battling up ahead, and he will be right back in it for the chances of maybe competing for a podium, but that 3-second time penalty is certainly going to hurt his chances at that.
And that hold that you were mentioning that we saw for Jan Fehler, that was worth about 1.5 seconds for Lenny PNR and Tom. Now, they are 2.2 seconds behind Jan Fehler. Before the pit stops, it was about 3.5, 3.6 when they came into the pit lane. So, they've been able to get a pretty significant march on Jan Fehler there, which might have just reignited the passion in these drivers here, because when you're 3.5 seconds behind the race leader, you're thinking, maybe they get a penalty, otherwise I'm not catching them. 2.2, that's a lot more doable.
Oh yes, that's certainly more doable indeed. And if the driver ahead gets a penalty, then you're going to jump them. Meanwhile, towards the back, Max, AMG, and Patrick going side by side on the exit of 4 and now through 5. But Patrick will have the position as good as you like. Max struggling on those hard tires compared to the drivers around him, losing out 2 positions to Patrick and Risky. Possibly now going to be under threat to By Blue behind, also on medium tires. But the Ferrari driver trying to come back through turn 9, but you cannot go around the outside of that corner. There's just no grip out there in comparison to the inside line, as Max will now have to settle in to 11th position. Meanwhile, up at the front, Mr. Hoffey holding up Kev Genetics. Kev Genetics going to the inside line. This is for the current race lead, and Kev Genetics will have the position. Goes a little deep in respect to Mr. Hoffey. Hoffey trying to come back now as Jan does a 1:08.8 fastest overall. And now Hoffey losing a little bit of touch through Kev Genetics. That dirty air through turn 3. Just too much for the Ferrari driver. And Kev Genetics is your new race leader, although he has not pitted yet.
And that 1:08.8 that you just saw from Jan Fehler, that is going to be very, very important mentally for him, and particularly mentally crushing at the moment for Lenny. However, saying that, doesn't appear to have been the case, as Lenny is closing in a little bit, but that's partially because Jan Fehler had to deal with the traffic of Revitalize. But what I was going to say is that Lenny's lap time, the first proper lap time, the first flying lap on the medium tires, was almost 0.2 slower than Jan Fehler. Now, it's not a huge amount, and maybe, you know, things fluctuate from lap to lap, but for the first flying lap, when the battle has been re-engaged between the drivers, it's a big mental victory for Jan that he got that fastest lap and that neither Lenny or Tom were able to match it.
Yes, that's definitely a mental victory. And another thing we got to look at here is this traffic. That's not lap traffic, of course. This is all 4 position. But Jan able to clear F1 Racer almost as easily as he cleared Revitalize, who Revitalized into the pits off of the medium tires, probably going onto the sauce, I would have to assume. We have Johan off on the exit of turn 12. What happened to him? It looks like he just lost the rear end. But Jan not really getting held up by the traffic. But Revitalized pitting helps Lenny out a lot. But Lenny now about 2.2 behind Jan. So gap's still the same, but F1 Racer in between. And if Jan maybe keeps F1 Racer with him, he might be able to, you know, let F1 Racer kind of use him as like a blocking, like a shield to Lenny. But considering how Jan is going about the middle sector right now, that does not look like the case.
Yeah, Johan decides to retire from the race after that incident in the final corner. Did not want to press on with this one and has thrown in the towel then. So we're down to 13 drivers in the field, and a few of them, only 3 who are realistically in with a chance of winning this race, barring any kind of safety car sort of shenanigans. And at the moment, Tom is threatening to fall outside of DRS range to Lenny, which could be very, very bad news for him indeed. Lenny himself does have DRS on F1 Racer, so that's going to give him a bit of a slingshot there, because F1 Racer headed into the pit lane, just like Kev Genetics and Maestro Hoffey. Tom actually got the fastest lap of the race briefly, for Risky actually came through to steal that one away as well. He's right on the rear end of Dean, just about 3 seconds behind the battling pair of Lenny and Tom. Lenny has now got a bit closer to Jan Fehler over the last couple of laps. He's regained those 0.2 he lost after the initial lap out of the pits, as it looks like actually Risky and Dean are battling there over 4th and 5th.
Risky making a beautiful move. Lenny's off! Lenny was off into turn 6. Not sure what happened there, but Lenny losing all sorts of positions now. He was completely off the track. Looks like he lost the rear end, hit the grass or whatnot. But Lenny, who was charging back up after having a screen freeze, now down into 8th. What happened to the Frenchman there? We don't know.
It's such a strange place to lose the car as well. I've got to imagine that it's another one of those issues. He does seem to be lagging quite a bit out there on circuit, and it's looking awfully easy for other cars to pass him. So Lenny has some kind of very distinct problem here. Once again, the exact same thing that afflicted him earlier in the race has come back to haunt the Frenchman, who is now down into 9th place. And with fresh soft tire runners in and around him, it's going to be very, very hard to dredge himself back up from those depths.
Yeah, it's going to be hard. And Dean is there. Goes Maestro Hoffy up the inside. Beautiful as you like. Lenny, though, holding it around the outside. They're going to go side by side through 3, but Lenny has the back out of it as there's not as much grip on those medium tires compared to those soft runners, especially going around the outside there. But it's heartbreak for the Frenchman in the final race this season. He's looking to add another race win to his belt. But it probably was a screen freeze on the run into 6 that probably caused that huge issue. You can see the 50-meter board completely gone, so I have to assume he froze on the entry as he was coming across the track to the left, and he froze, slammed on the brakes to avoid going crashing into that outside wall. But as a result, he has lost all sorts of positions. Meanwhile, Risky, though, up into the podium paying positions, and Patrick 3.9 behind Dean, so it looks like Dean and Risky, it is still game on. I believe they both have, yes, they both have only 3 seconds of time penalties, so as long as they stay that 3.9 or even 3 seconds ahead of Patrick, that is the battle for the final podium spot. Dean, who I'm sure wants it at his home Grand Prix, and Risky also would want it just because he had a horrible start to the race and now back up into 3rd. But we got a battle brewing here for what is P7. Kev Genetics, Maestro Hoffy, Baibu, and Lenny all scrapping it out right now. All going each different way, but Lenny not opening DRS though on the run to 4, and he lagged again.
Lagging again.
So the Frenchman.
Lagging again. The Frenchman, yeah, it's just a disaster for him. It's so sad to see his season ending this way. It's only a minor damper though compared to the season he's had. He's had a fantastic season here in season 21 of AOR. Yeah, 6 wins in the season. He'd have loved to have made it a 7th, as you mentioned, but it's not going to be any major skin off his nose that he can't, because he still has that championship bought and paid for already. So, you know, it's sad, but it's not the end of the world as far as he's concerned, I'm sure. I would have loved to see him continuing, though, because he was really threatening to close down Jan Thaler. What I was going to say just before he had that incident was that he actually was in a much better battery state than Jan Thaler, which always suggests that at some point in the race, the guy with the better battery state is going to start closing in on the other one. Unfortunately, we never got to see whether that was going to happen or not as a result of that screen freezing issue with the lag or whatever it is. And Lenny down there in 9th. Tom97 doesn't really have an answer for Jan Thaler's pace right now either, now that he doesn't have Lenny to drag him along. So it seems like Tom's dreams of 3 wins on the bounce to round out his stint on F1 2021 are probably not going to come to fruition here.
Yeah, and Baiblue in the pits, he broke his wing on the entry to turn 10. It kind of looked like he also had a screen freeze. I don't think he hit the grass or anything. So the Frenchmen, the 3 Frenchmen on the grid, all of them struggling due to some kind of like technical issues for the most part. I mean, Johan, nothing visual, but he still was struggling with equipment and stuff. And then the other 2, Baiblue and Lenny, both looking like they're struggling with internet connection. So I wonder what's going on over there in France. Hopefully everything's okay. But it is heartbreak to see the drivers all struggle in the final race. But meanwhile, Risky has broken DRS on Dean, but Patrick is now 4.8 behind the Brazilian. So the front 3 really flying right now. Risky not really closing in on Tom per se, but the front 3, even Dean, pulling away from the rest of the field behind.
Risky was the fastest of those front 3 drivers on that last lap around, but big caveat, he used a lot of overtake to achieve that, as Revitalize will then retire from the race in the pit lane. Red Bull driver not happy with how this race weekend has gone. But yeah, Risky actually did manage to draw about 0.6 of a second on both Tom and Jan Thaler on that last lap, but it was entirely due to battery charge usage, so now he has to start saving up and expect to see him falling back outside of that 3-second mark from Tom97.
Interesting. That would explain a lot. Meanwhile, behind Patrick, Max AMG is back in DRS, maybe trying to threaten him as the race goes on and the medium tires get more worn. But behind him, he's got Kev Genetics and his teammates. So it's an AlphaTauri Ferrari fight here in these last 11 laps. As the drivers come through turn 14 now. Can Patrick hold on? So even though the top 4 are all a little spread out here, 5th through 8th is game on, with Lenny 2.3 behind, and I'm probably still struggling with internet issues for sure. But a little bit of a lockup from the front 2 cars in this group, struggling on the hard compound. But it doesn't look like KevGenetics and Mr. Hoffy really are getting any overspeed on their rivals as Max closes in due to DRS. But the 2 soft tire runners not really looking faster than the harder compounds right now, and they're only on 4-lap old softs. So that is interesting, and it's hats off to Patrick and Max for just having that really good pace on those harder compound tires.
Yeah, I will say if that Kev and Maestro Hoffy, if they are able to get past both their respective teammates, Patrick and Max AMG, they are in with a shout of a podium here, because Dean and Risky both have those 3-second time penalties. KevGenetics and Maestro Hoffy should have the fastest tires pretty much all the way to the end of this race. But as you mentioned, they're not making enough of an imprint right now, and that 5-second gap ahead of Patrick is a bit daunting. But once they're in that clean air, if they do manage to get into that clean air, it should be a lot easier for them to start closing down at least Dean for that 3-second mark that they need to the Brazilian currently in 4th. Risky might be a bit of a tall order as he is still actually managing to put on even more speed. But there you see Maestro Hoffy is setting the fastest lap of this race, and KevGenetics had to even think about going a little bit defensive there from the Ferrari driver behind. Max has a big moment there through turn 3, and this is the opportunity that KevGenetics needed. This is very, very important for KevGenetics' race, but he doesn't have enough left in the battery, so he can't challenge Max into Desquito del Lago. And with that moment, you might have just seen any chance of a podium slipping away from KevGenetics.
Yeah, it's been slipping every lap because Patrick just not able to match the pace of Dean and Risky up ahead. And ooh, KevGenetics breaking a tad too late into the rear of Max. That also brings Mr. Hoffy onto the rear of KevGenetics. Will either of these drivers try to make a move into turn 10 perhaps? No, nothing going on there. The soft tire runners now looking a little quicker. They realize that they got to get a hustle on, but their chances of possibly stealing a podium or a top 4 even are definitely going down the drain every lap that these guys stay behind the 2 harder compound runners up ahead. KevGenetics, though, using his battery, hoping that the Ferrari up ahead doesn't have enough to defend, but he's got to be careful because Maestro Hoffy is right behind. His light is not blinking, and there goes KevGenetics going to the right. The Ferrari up ahead going defensive, but they're going to go 3 wide into turn 1. It's a sandwich. Max AMG in the middle, and KevGenetics is going to come out up ahead. It was, I don't know how there was no bits of carbon fire flying off of these cars, but now on the run into 4, does Max AMG, is he able to come back? He's going on the inside, he's got more battery, and Max AMG retakes the position after being caught in the middle of a sandwich, and KevGenetics actually goes wide, and that's going to open the door for Mr. Hoffy. Hoffy stealing 7th position, so KevGenetics, who was looking like he was going to finally get the position away from Max, turns out he loses 2 in the following corners, and Mr. Hoffy up into 7th, KevGenetics now down to 8th.
I'm going to sound like a bit of a broken record here, but you know what that's all down to? That's all down to battery charge. KevGenetics didn't have enough, managed to get track position on Max, had the better tires, still had DRS on the car ahead, should have been able, by all rights, to keep Max behind, but for one thing, the fact that Max had about 30% in his battery compared to the 3% that KevGenetics had to offer on the exit of turn 3 on the run down towards 4. Now, with Max having been put off a little bit in the last couple of laps, Maestro Hoffy, his teammates all over his rear end, but still, Max is able to just out-drag everyone on the straights. He breaks later into the first corner, but he picks up a 3-second time penalty in his defense. He already had one as well, so he is fighting some losing battles here, which is going to be even more frustrating for Hoffy and Kev because they know that they are going to finish this race ahead of Max. So it's going to be so frustrating that he's providing such a bottleneck for these drivers as Maestro Hoffy does now finally manage to dispatch his teammate. Patrick is up next, and Patrick doesn't have DRS on anyone ahead, so he should be an easier prospect for Maestro Hoffy to pass.
Yes, meanwhile, Lenny has caught these guys back up, so it looks like whatever his issue was, he kind of resorted out. Now he's trying to go up the inside, but no, he's hangs behind KevGenetics, but Lenny going to try to clear these guys, able to break so much later into turn 10. Goes a little too deep to avoid the AlphaTauri, but he's definitely going to mix this battle up a little bit, maybe give that little bit of extra spice that we may not have known we needed now as Lenny comes out of the final corner. A little bit of rear wheel spin, but he's going to go for a double overtake potentially on KevGenetics and Max AMG. I'm sure he's got plenty of battery. He's got 50%. Not really getting enough on KevGenetics, who's going to try to go for the move on Max. Max going completely defensive. Kev trying to go around the outside. Nothing doing though. Max able to outbrake him, and they hold position through turn 2 and 3. But now on the run down in the DRS rate of turn 4. Lenny sees the blinking red light of Kev Genetics behind, but Kev giving it all he has, going to the inside line on his rival, but is not able to make the move stick, and they hold position once again.
Yeah, in Kev Genetics, thankfully, we don't have any sort of motion capture control in the game. Otherwise, I'm sure I'd be seeing a fair few gestures coming out of the cockpit between Kev Genetics and Max AMG, because he is going to be so frustrated at staring at the Dutchman's rear wing for as long as he has. He's so much faster than Max right now, but he's just not patient enough. He keeps spamming his overtake button and every chance he gets. And every time, Max just has that little bit more to fight back with. He needs to just wait. He needed to cool down a few laps ago, spend a couple laps charging up his battery, and then he'd have more than Max, and then he'd be able to pass the Dutchman within a lap or two, and by now he'd be ahead of Patrick as well. He'd be closing down Dean and Risky, but it's not been the case in this race, and once again he's going for it at the first possible opportunity, and once again Max is able to defend into the braking zone. This time Kev Genetics might still have the inside for 2, but they make contact and Kev Genetics goes round, and on that occasion I think he might have even more cause grievance with Max.
Yes, that was just heartbreaking. Max closing the door, probably turning in a tad too much there, but Kev Genetics, the biggest loser on that. We saw that from Lenny's on board. He was not really trying to make the overtakes, going, all right, let's let these guys fight it out. I know I'm faster, but I'm just going to let them do their thing. And as a result, he was able to keep it clean. Now, lucky for him, ghosting is on. Otherwise, Lenny would have gone right. Oh, and Lenny's disconnected. He just turned right off. What happened there? Lenny having complete issues. His wheel or something happened, because he just turned right off the track. He just did not start turning there. Not sure what happened. He might be having wheel issues, connection issues, whatnot, but Lenny, once again, having even more problems for the Frenchman. As it was, I don't know if you were watching off of him, but he just turned right off there. Probably another crazy, bizarre thing that's happened, but Lenny, everything's going wrong for him today. But up towards the front, though, Mr. Hoffey making the move on Patrick down into turn number 1. The Ferrari driver taking the position now on those soft tires, but they're 10 laps old. They're not really going to work much better than those 16-lap-old mediums up ahead, and he's got to close in at 3 seconds if he wants to steal 4th place from Dean. But Risky is 1.2 behind Tom.
Yeah.
So while we're watching the battle for mid-range points, Risky has run down Tom. Now, Risky does have that 3-second time penalty, so Tom doesn't really need to defend this, but this is still going to be a spicy battle.
Yeah, and it would be a huge scalp for Risky as well. The guy that won the last 2 races in pretty comfortable fashion, if Risky can beat him on track, even if he doesn't manage to beat him at the end due to penalties, that's huge for Risky in his second ever race here in Split 1 of AOR. So, yeah, he's going to be delighted if he can battle with Tom to the line here, and it looks like he's going to be able to do that. I mentioned a few laps ago that I thought he only closed in a little bit because he used more overtake, but then Tom has just been not very fast on this set of medium tires compared to what he could do on the softs earlier on. Tom does not like this yellow-walled set of tires. He has been in the 109s consistently, whereas both Risky and Jan Fehler are in the mid to high 108s lap after lap. So Tom has been losing lap time very, very consistently to both of those drivers. And as a result, he finds himself under a lot of pressure now for second on track.
Yeah, Risky definitely is kind of like a what-if right now, because if you remember, he had that early on. Disconnection was all the way at the back. And now he's not even 6 seconds off of the race lead. So it's kind of what-if if he didn't disconnect. Because even with his shocking start that dropped him down to 8th, he still, you know, he wouldn't have lost half as much time as he did with the disconnection, as Patrick picks up a time penalty. That levels the playing field with him and Max. Fernandez going fastest on softs that are fresh, but Risky now. And I don't know what he's done in between Canada last week and today, but assuming that he uses racing line in some other leagues, this is probably also his second race without the line, and he is flying right now. He's going to try to go around the outside. Tom 97 crosses the line, goes purple, and Risky has second place, as clean as you like. Now he's going to have to try to see if he can break DRS and pull away from Tom, but Tom getting a much better run through 3 now. The Red Bull driver trying to come back at his rival up ahead. Risky weaving a little bit, not really much that's bad per se, but Risky holding on to the position.
Yeah, Risky actually overtook Tom twice into the first corner there. He braked too late into turn 1 when he already had the move done and almost threw it all away, but luckily Tom wasn't in a position to reclaim second from the Racing Point driver. Sadly for Risky, there's only 3, now 2.5 laps left to go, so he's not going to be able to build a 3-second gap to Tom in time, you would have to imagine. but nevertheless, very, very storming drive indeed from Risky. And ever since he's been on these medium tires, his pace has been, you know, on average, about 1/10 of a second slower than Jan Thaler per lap. And Jan has been very, very comfortable in the lead of this race. So Risky has been incredibly impressive, as you mentioned.
Yeah, he has been incredibly impressive indeed, but Jan Thaler just dominating start to finish. He hasn't put a foot wrong all race. The German driver, absolutely fantastic drive by him up front. He's got 2 to go, a little less than that now. But Jan, absolutely, this has got to be what he was looking for. That race victory on the season to end it at his favorite track. Now, it's funny, before the race he said, oh, don't mention it's my favorite track unless I do well. Right now, everything's going right for the German driver, his favorite track. And oh, Patrick went off. He was battling, I believe, Max into turn 1, and Patrick gets sent off. So Max, it looks like, has been involved in an incident with 2 AlphaTauri drivers. I think Max realizes he was in the wrong. He waited up for Patrick and let him through, which will cost him a place to Kevgenex and F1 Racer. Probably feeling a little bad. Might not have left enough space for his rival, but that clears up Mr. Hoffey to basically get 6th place or 5th place for sure.
Yeah, very, very sporting stuff there from Max. You'd love to see it, and good news that he's being heads up about it. I didn't see the incident. I don't know whether he's right to blame himself for it, but if he has that shred of doubt, I think that's exactly the right thing to do. So good job from him, especially considering he's not fighting for a whole lot. He's on very old tires. He's got a lot of penalties in the pocket, so I think he was going to lose all those positions anyway at the checkered flag. So yeah, I think that's just a really nice gesture then from the Ferrari driver to let both of the AlphaTauris through. And Patrick reclaims 6th position, but he is going to lose out to both F1 Racer and Kevgenetics at the line because he has a 3-second time penalty, and both of those guys are without any penalties at this stage. Back up towards the front, Tom has not been dropped by Risky whatsoever. He's comfortably sticking with his fellow British driver out there, and Risky himself is now starting to slow up compared to Jan Thaler. He's got 3-lap elderly tyres compared to Jan Thaler as well, so that might be why Risky, as soon as he got past Tom, seems to have started to struggle.
Yeah, definitely. Tom probably has a little bit more battery because Risky's light has always been going off. But a little note on Max, he had a completely broken left-hand part of his front wing, so there might have been a little bit more to tell than what we saw. But either way, he's definitely going to be down in 9th. Lenny and By Blue battling in the background. But let's go up to 1st place now. Jan Thaler coming through turn 15 now. It's been an absolutely dominant performance by the German driver, and here in round 12, he wins in Sao Paulo. Jan Thaler on the top step. Go on.
Look behind us, Tom and Risky drag race to the line. It's not going to matter because of the penalty, but Tom took it on track anyway. Just at the very end there, thrilling finish between those 2 drivers. Dean will come home in 4th, but let's talk about his teammate Jan Thaler, who won the race, as you mentioned, dominating performance on the day. And would you believe me if I told you that was his first race win of the season? He's had 5 second places thus far this season, so that is going to be huge for him. It's going to be such a relief, a monkey off his back, to finally get that win in the last race of the season.
I mean, that's definitely a great way to end the game. I know Tom was looking to get that win, but Jan snatched it inside, got his first win on the season, finally broke that curse of 2nd place finishes. He actually, I don't know if I told you, but in China, he was winning the whole race, and then in that final hairpin, in the final sector, he got outbroken by Lenny, got overtaken, and lost the win. So he's been so hungry for a race win, and he finally gets it today. And hats off to him. Absolutely dominant performance. Did not put a foot wrong. Was able to pull away from everyone else, and now stands on the top step of the podium in the final race in AOR on F1 2020. Hats off and congratulations to him.
Yeah, Lenny able to show his class by going on soft tyres at the end to gain the fastest lap of the race. And it looks like he and his teammate By Blue have both been able to cross the line side by side for a nice little grandstand finish over 10th and 11th places. Lenny didn't need any points, so he's not going to be too unhappy. It would have been nice to see him battling at the very front. He might have been able to bring the challenge to Jan Thaler that Tom97 ultimately couldn't really manage at the end of the race. But nevertheless, good performance from Tom, but a better one from Jan Thaler.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get the race director real fast in case any of the drivers need it for any kind of steward inquiries. But now that the race is over, who is your driver of the day?
My driver of the day, I mean, there's 2 names that stand out, right? So you got Risky, who had so many issues, the poor start, and then the disconnection. And that was a pretty significant amount of time that was disconnected, over about half a lap at least. and still he came back to almost beat Tom97 on the line. Couldn't quite do it on the line and lost out to penalties anyway, but he was really, really good today. And Jan Fehler, of course, as well. I will say that Jan Fehler was obviously actually the best driver, but compared to expectations, I think Risky had a great performance.
I'm going to completely agree with what you just said. I mean, I would go drive of the day because of Risky's amazing recovery drive after dropping down the order. It's kind of similar to what we saw Charles Leclerc do, you know, drop all the way towards the back and then just work his way back through the field and get some really good points, and in Risky's case, a podium. But Jan Fehler was the class of the field today. Honestly, I commentated him for now a season and a little bit, and I think this is his best performance in the last, at least in 2021. I don't think he's had a performance this good all season. I mean, he was class of the field. Even when Lenny wasn't having any issues, he wasn't really losing time to him. And Lenny had clean air. He had the chances to push and catch up, and Jan was just, you know, matching his pace lap for lap. And that's not something we've really seen all season from him. So a fantastic drive by the German driver and a great way to end this calendar year game. And I'm sure he's going to be riding high going into next season.
Absolutely. And I got to say, the other best race I've seen from Jan Fehler this season, also in Brazil, in a different league, but I saw Jan Fehler taking a very impressive win, a very hard-fought win with a Red Bull, actually, on that occasion as well, that he managed to beat into second place. So yeah, Jan evidently really does like the circuit.
Yeah, so his favorite track brings it home. We're going to actually go ahead and bring him on in here first. We got several interviews for us, but we're going to start out with Jan. So, hello there, Jan. You finally got your race win this season and in absolutely dominant fashion. How are you feeling after that one?
Fantastic. I am very, very happy and pleased.
So, walk us through that race. I mean, you basically got the lead before turn one even started, and then you just never looked back. What was what was going through your head in the starting phase of the race, and then once you saw the gap just increase behind?
Well, I was very confident that I could get the lead into turn one because my starts usually are quite good, and in qualifying I was furious with myself and throwing away the pole position. I guess Lenny can say it the same as everyone always can say, you know, I lost time here and there, so what does it matter in the end? Front row was what counted. And was happy that I got the start I wanted. Broke a bit later than I initially would have thought to just make sure and squeeze him a bit, and then he backed out of it early, so I can just, you know, cut on the inside on the apex of two. And then I tried to run away with Lenny, together with Lenny, from the rest of the grid, but it didn't really work out that well, so I decided to just save some ERS and, you know, manage everything, the tires, so I can potentially overcut people. Eventually, unfortunately, really, Lenny had his wheel issues, apparently, like 4 times that he just said in the Discord chat. I thought he just had some leg spikes, but he never had them before, so that was weird anyway, but that explains it, of course. But that was my chance, so without Lenny right behind me, I was able to keep Dean, my teammate, away from the DRS and just run away myself. And yeah, in the end, not making any mistakes, that was the race win right there.
I mean, it was a fantastic drive. Lenny had those wheel disconnects, but even when he was driving clean, you seemed to still be matching his pace and just absolutely blitzing it. And, I mean, you said before the race, and I did just mention this, that you said it's your favorite track, and only to bring that up if you have a great result. And I think today just reaffirms that this definitely is your favorite and best track because it was an outstanding performance. Jacob, do you got any questions you want to ask Jan here?
Well, yeah, I guess I'll build on that because Jan, I'm sure you remember, I've commentated on another very impressive race of yours at Brazil earlier on in the 2020 season, I should say. What is it you think that it is about this track that seems to suit your style so much? What is it that you like so much about it, and why do you think you find so much more pace than other guys here?
Well, first of all, it's a short track. I tend to like short tracks because I don't only like this one. I really like Austria as well. I really like like short tracks. I don't know. My brain's not working right now. Yeah, Zandvoort. Yeah, actually, yeah. I really enjoy that one as well. I guess I don't know. It's one of the first tracks that I properly that I learned when I was a child and playing F1 games. That was the first track where I really just could close my eyes basically and know which corner comes next and how to drive it in my mind. That's part of it. And then I don't think there's any bad corner about the track, really. I mean, there's better and worse corners of the track, obviously, like on all tracks, but in general, apart from the fact that you have to use the green tarmac on the game, which obviously doesn't really exist in real life, so it's not really the track's fault, it's more the game's fault. Apart from that, it's just really nice to drive everywhere. And turn 4 is actually my favorite corner of the calendar, because you can just go all the way out, just about, not touching the grass on the right-hand side, and then just completely slam it on the brakes, throw the car into the corner, trail brake on that apex, touch that curb, and just completely floor the throttle again just after that apex again, and just the car, it just feels so natural and so quick and so great. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, actually. That corner does... It's one of those corners that feels like this was made for F1 cars. F1, there's certain tracks where F1 cars, you're driving around a corner and you think, this wasn't really what this... this track didn't expect something this fast to be going around it. But that corner, it's like Degner 1 in that way. It has that same sort of appeal to me. So yeah, thank you. That was a very good answer. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That's some fantastic stuff, Jan. I got one more final question for you. Now, you're riding high after this race. Are you confident going into the next game that you can keep this momentum going? I mean, we don't know how it's going to be, of course, but are you excited to see what the coming months have to bring?
Excited, yes. Confident, well, I guess so. I mean, I've only played a few hours on the beta, but I really enjoyed the game, so I have no doubts that that's going to be great fun diving into that game, figuring out how everything works, setups, physics. Obviously, for AOR, we have to figure out the damage model and everything, and how we set the settings for the league. That's going to be really interesting and some effort to do. But in general, I mean, I haven't been doing anything else than the top split on the PC side since joining AOR, so I'm confident doing that again. And then, obviously, the target is to fight for race wins again. I mean, that's what I'm aiming for, and I'm confident that I at least will be doing that in Brazil, if not on any other track.
Yeah, well, hopefully we do see you battling for the top next season. I look forward to seeing and hopefully commentating over it. It's been an amazing season for you. I mean, you finally capped out a race win and ended your curse of second places. And congratulations one last time on that absolutely dominant win for you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for commentating as well.
Of course.
And yeah, throughout the season, actually. Good to have you on board there.
Thank you. Yeah, it was my pleasure. I enjoyed it. And yeah, you guys provided amazing action on track. So I returned the favor just as much. So.
Yeah, very good. We'll do that again next season. Don't you worry. We're going to have some action on track. That's going to be good.
All right. Well, Jan, you enjoy the rest of your evening and congratulations.
Thank you. Have a nice evening too. Goodbye.
All right. So that was Jan Fehler. Next, we're actually going to bring in Maestro Hoffy, and then following him, we'll have Risky in here. So I saw Maestro's name first, so we're just going to go with him. And let's hear what he has to say about his race. Hello, Maestro. How are you feeling after that a very eventful Brazilian Grand Prix? You had a lot of battling through the middle stint. Well, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I feel actually really, really happy because, yeah, qualifying was so close, and I actually made a decision to don't finish my lap, so I could start from outside the top 10. And yeah, I had a lot of faith in the reverse strategy, and it's so great it worked out in the end.
Yeah, we had a feeling you backed out for the reverse strategy, and it did work out for you. Now, like we just said, when there's the 4 cars, your 2 Ferraris, and then the 2 AlphaTauris, what was going through your head through that whole battling? I mean, it was really chaotic, really eventful. Were you ever concerned that you wouldn't be able to get through? Because it kind of looked like a couple of your teammate and the car head were a little bit more of roadblocks per se.
Yeah, actually, I don't want to sound arrogant, but actually, I was quite confident that I could get past because, like, all race long, I was able to save a lot of the ERS, and I just thought when, like, I catched up to Max AMG, and I think it was Patrick, just saving ERS, and when, like, the red light is flashing on their cars, just overtake them, and I think it worked out pretty well.
It definitely did. Jacob, do you got any questions you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, do you think maybe there were, if you hadn't been behind Kev Genetics when he came up to that battle, obviously maybe you might feel that you would have been able to get through a little bit quicker of the 2 kind of guys on the harder tires up ahead of you. Do you think if you hadn't had Kev Genetics ahead of you at that point. Do you think you could have maybe looked to try and challenge for that podium spot that Risky was able to take? Do you think you had the pace to get up there? Because those drivers, of course, had some penalties to deal with. Or do you reckon you about got the most out of the race that you could have done?
It's like a mixture of both, because I think in the end I finished like 2 seconds behind P4. So definitely I could have gotten P4 if I wasn't stuck so long behind the AlphaTaurius and my teammate. But a podium is like a big far fetch, because I think what's his name? Risky finished like 11 seconds behind me, and he also did fastest laps at this point, which was some sort of my pace, and yeah, was not possible for me to get a podium. P4 definitely was possible today, but yeah, I'm just happy with P5.
Yeah, well, very, very well done, and especially from being further down on the grid, of course. So congratulations on the result.
Thank you.
All right, and that was Mr. Hoffy for us. We're going to go ahead and bring in Risky. He will be our, what I would assume is our final interview of the season. And let's go ahead and hear on his thoughts on his amazing drive. Hello, Risky. You had yourself a very bad start to the race, but you pulled off a brilliant recovery drive. What was going through your head throughout that race?
I think it's some words which I'm not allowed to say on stream. But yeah, I mean, it was really strange, that whole race. I mean, I think I was massively desynced at the start, because I got a big screen freeze and I made contact with Tom, and then I also got wing damage, but when I came back, my wing damage was gone. So I have no idea how that worked. And then, to be honest, I mean, I always knew that my pace around Brazil would hopefully be strong, because it's my best track. But yeah, then it was just one by one, you know, get overtakes. I went for the really early pit stop onto mediums. The end was like, okay, 80% wear. Let's not get a puncture now. But yeah, I think I'm on lap 14. I jumped 3 drivers with the undercut. And then of course getting past the McLaren, Lenny having his wheel disconnect boosted me up another position. And then to be honest, I could have waited to overtake Tom, but I was like, nah, free thumbnail. Let's get it done now. And so yeah, I mean, I'm really happy with the podium. This is my second race without line, and yeah, I'm really happy.
Yeah, we were wondering if you'd done in the past week any races without line. It seems like you haven't. Did you feel more confident coming to this race without having the line as something you weren't able to drive with than compared to Canada? How did you prepare any differently? Talk us through that.
Well, I'm in isolation right now. My roommate's tested positive, so I've had nothing to do. I can't leave my house. So I've just done so much work, and I mean, Brazil is my best track. And to be honest, I don't really like Canada as a circuit, and Brazil is just, I just love the flow. I managed to pick up the braking points like that. Like with Canada, it was taking me ages. I'd have to use shadows, but Brazil, it was just way more natural to me because I've done so much practice for it before. And so I just picked it up like that. I was setting, I mean, qualifying was not 0.3 off my PB, and I was way more comfortable here than Canada. I mean, you know, Jan and Lenny were on another level today, and Tom was probably too quick as well. But it's a what if without the contact at the start. But I think, yeah, I was way more comfortable here than Canada or really any other track, to be honest.
Jacob, would you like to add any questions to?
I think you covered most of it, to be honest. I will say, obviously, I mean, was it a big moment for you passing Tom? Because obviously Tom, very established driver, very talented driver on the game, someone who's won the last 2 races on the bounce as well. You know, overtaking him in the moment, obviously, I think you knew at that point that you weren't going to be able to gap him with the penalty that you had. But, you know, was that a big moment for you, getting past him there?
Yeah, that was, to be honest, that was my goal. That was my goal. As soon as I joined AOR, I wanted to... excuse me. Maybe I do have COVID. I just wanted to pass Tom, because not because I got anything against the guy, but you know, I've F1 2020 for me has been huge. This is my first season league racing. Before that, I've never done any, and I thought, like, passing Tom, this is my final proper league race of the game, like passing Tom is just a really nice thing to do because he's so established. I've watched his career mode videos for years as well, and I'm actually like, I really enjoy his YouTube videos, and yeah, passing him was just a really nice way to round off the year. Unfortunately, he outdragged me back, but no, it was just a nice sort of thing oh my god, this is how far I've come. Like the guy whose career mode videos and league race videos I was watching, I'm now racing with and overtaking, and then getting re-overtaken. But yeah.
Nice little asterisk on the end. But yeah, no, I can see that would be a super nice feeling. So congratulations on that, and best of luck. And I hope that you haven't got COVID, and I hope that your roommate it will be fine as well. I'm sure everything's going to be all right.
Yeah, hopefully. Thank you so much, guys, for all your work this season.
You're welcome.
No
Thank you for joining us for the last 2 races, and hopefully we see you next season.
Hopefully so. Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
See ya.
And that was our final interview of the season. He really did have a fantastic performance, and hopefully he does not have COVID, because that would be unfortunate. But
yeah,
Risky definitely looked like, if it wasn't for that disconnect and that wheel banging at the start, he definitely looked like he could have battled with Jan, and if Lenny doesn't have his wheel issues, we could have had a titanic battle at the front. But sometimes that happens, and I guess that's part of league racing, so I'm sure these guys will get a month or so off from it, I would assume, and then to fix any issues and then be back out on track.
Yeah, and of course, you never know what's going to be in store with you when it comes to F1 2020. Sometimes it doesn't suit some people. You heard Jan saying that he really liked the feel of F1 2020, so maybe good things to come for him, or F1 2021, I should say. So maybe good things to come from him. We'll have to watch that space. But, hopefully for all these drivers, it's going to be a positive game cycle. It's going to be a game that they get along with, and we'll see them going from strength to strength.
Yep, cannot wait. It's going to be... I want to be excited for the next season, that's for sure, and I cannot wait to see what the action has. And as always, thank you very much for watching this feature presentation of Apex Online Racing Hype Energy Formula 1 Leagues. This is the end of the season for Season 21. Now, we will be back in a month or so's time for F1 2021 action once that season gets underway. But meanwhile, in the meantime, the Assetto Corsa Competizione League is on their final race of the season this Monday and Tuesday. And on Monday, there's a championship battle with less than 15 points, if I'm correct, between the front two. So stay tuned for that battle if you want more AOR content. And we hope you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. Have a safe and happy rest of your weekend. And we look forward to seeing you guys in the near future.